clean list of announcements that's coming from the finance minister. But if I could address one of the disappointments, to put it mildly, as far as the Capex issue is concerned, and I'll quote a tweet to you. The key issue in the budget is the near zero allocation for infra over the last year, 11.2 lakh or over 11.1. Is this a reset of national economic strategy that large outlays in infra will no longer be the pump primer of the economy? Will this be the hitherto stated strategy? Mr. Pandey.
Well, I think that's not the way we should look at it, because if you really look at it, the Capex directly, and then first of all, we have to understand the budget. There are two kinds of Capex. One is the Capex per se directly by the central government.
Yeah.
The secondly is the Capex which goes from the central government, first as a grant, as a revenue expenditure, and then it goes into for creation of assets at the hand of the states. So therefore, in the budget at a glance, in the statement itself, you have something called grant in creation of capital assets.
Right.
And this has been there for many years. And this number is actually 15.48 lakh crores. It's about 15.6 lakh crores. So it's not really 11 lakh crores that we are talking about.
So you're saying that we should not see it as 11.1 to 11.21. We should see it as 11.1 to the allocation that's been apportioned for states as well.
Exactly. Why it's important? Because if you really see, there is a 10% growth on the RE numbers over, in this B for the Capex.
Right.
But if you really count the two, it is 17% growth, because a lot of money we are sending it in the Capex through
To
the states. So therefore, if you really don't count them, you really don't get to know exactly. And those numbers are very much visible in the budget itself.
So there's no change as far as the Capex heavy lifting that the government attempted to do in the last few years. There's no change in that strategy is the question.
The Capex continues. All I'm saying is that it may not be that we are having that 30% increment at one time and so on. But, the Capex continues, and our effort will be on implementation of Capex.
Okay, let me now address the issue as far as the personal income tax cut is concerned. And I think everyone acknowledges that this was not what was expected. This is much better than what the street was expecting, what people were expecting, which was some relief. Now, what do you believe this could potentially do, and how soon could it provide that growth momentum to the economy?
Well, when it comes to the economy, we have to see is who is making investments, who is making savings, who is doing consumption. So therefore, we have in the broad economy, there are three characters. One is the households, the second is the private sector, corporate sector, the third is the government. Now, everyone, does saving, everyone does an investment. And put together, it is a saving, and put together is an investment. Now, compositionally, what we are doing is we are shifting some of the money which the government would have got had we continued with the old rates into the hands of the people. And all that it will do, it will not only spur consumption, it can also have impact on savings or investments. You and me, when you get more money, you may choose to consume, you may choose to save, or you may choose to invest. If you choose to save, somebody else is investing it on your behalf.
Right.
If you choose to invest directly in a house or something, you are the investor directly.
Yeah.
And if you choose to consume, you are basically spurring the demand for several others when you will propel investments by them.
Right.
So in a way, we are putting that money, and that money is going to come back to the economy anyways.
So what could be the impact of that? And again, there are estimates being made by former colleagues of yours in terms of the multiplier impact on growth. Do you believe that this 10.8% nominal growth number, you could perhaps do better?
Well, I would say that, it will actually, because we are giving a choice to the people in a manner, I think those choices will be duly, wisely done by the people, and therefore economy will stand to benefit.
So you're not sticking your neck out and 6.8%. The CA says now within grasp. The DA says looks very doable. Do you believe that you could perhaps better it?
Well, I think we are looking up. if you really see, we have, there was a prediction that in the second half it will look up. See, we are also facing a lot of global headwinds. So it's not that the environment that we are right now in is extremely favorable. And so our economy, even though as is one of the fastest growing economy among the large economies in the world, it is also facing global headwinds. So we do not know exactly how it's going to pan out. But we are putting a best foot forward in trying to optimize growth, trying to find out, as FM said, reforms as a fuel. As FM said, engines, 4 engines. You know, the engines are very broad-based. Agriculture, MSME, investment. And investment is not merely investment in physical infrastructure, in people, as well as economy and exports. So therefore, I think the overall and the inclusivity which that comes in, and plus this income tax relief, if you really take it, it is a balanced view. It's not binary that it is Capex versus this. I think it is basically a balanced view to propel the economy and also reform as a fuel.
Do you believe that that 75% that is moved to the new tax regime, that number will go up significantly on the back of the measures that you've announced?
Surely. Maybe they will reach 100% very
Maybe they'll reach 100% and the sun will finally set on the old tax regime. You believe that?
Well, the choice is there, but if the people don't find it attractive enough, they will move. Let them make a choice.
Let them make a choice. So, Mr. Chawla, let's address the disinvestment agenda. 47,000 crore rupees, that is what the budget has put down as the disinvestment target. There's no point talking about targets because, you know, we've not really realistically achieved the disinvestment targets that have been set out. So let me ask you what the disinvestment calendar looks like, starting with IDBI Bank, because that has moved much further along than anything else. Where are we on that today, sir?
Thank you. I'll first clarify that there is no fixed disinvestment target. We have moved on to a more comprehensive asset management approach, where our aim is to optimize value, not just for the government, which is the promoter of enterprises, but millions of minority shareholders, ordinary investors who have reposed their faith in us. As part of our strategy, we will balance between a consistent dividend policy and a calibrated asset monetization strategy. Along with this, we have built in strict performance benchmarks for the CPSEs, along with Capex targets. As Finance Secretary mentioned, a large part of the Capex actually comes from public enterprises. And an effective communication strategy. But that does not mean that I can reveal market-sensitive information.
On the one that's already public, which is IDBI Bank, where do things stand?
Good. So IDBI, that is on track. And I will not give precise details at the moment, but I can assure you it's on track, and in due course, you will hear it.
Okay, in due course, meaning obviously nothing in this financial year, so it moves to the next financial year as far as the bids are concerned.
No comments.
No comments on that. Let me ask you this, sir. You know, you've spent a large part of the last many years looking at disinvestment. Now, what should we realistically expect in terms of the appetite for disinvestment? And also, how should we read the moves that have been seen recently with the government actually infusing capital into SIC PSUs, whether it's RINL or MTNL and so on and so forth? What should we read into the message the government is sending out on disinvestment?
No, I think this, so far as the MTNL is concerned, it was never on the disinvestment list. And it was because it was decided that at least one strategic, because of the strategic nature of the BSNL MTL was retained as a part of our policy. So far as the RINL is concerned, you know that as a going concern, the company has been in a very bad state. So as a going concern, we have to look at it, and now the whole analysis has been done, a thing has been done, because in any case, that's an ongoing concern issue. But even on the IDBI, I mean, I would hazard a guess, you know, the things are there, the due diligence process is on. And
but it's been on for years.
no, I mean, there was an issue because there was an RBI process that had taken a lot of time, and then finally the RBI cleared it. We told the market, told the media that, you know, the due diligence process is now on after the fit and proper.
Right.
And I think very soon the financial bids will come, and following which, you know, the result will be out. I mean, the thing.
So you're
will
saying
take
very
place.
soon the financial bids? Can you give us a more specific timeline?
I would say, I mean, of course, Arunish would be in a better position to say, but we were saying that, you know, possibly before March, this end of the financial year, financial bids might come, and then, you know, subsequently, you know, there will be some process to do it in
so
the very
even
next
by
year.
March, we could still hope for the bids to come in as far as IDBI Bank is concerned.
It depends if the transaction advisor is able to really, I mean, if the bidders are ready to do that, they are ongoing. So, but that's on track.
That's on track, and that is the hope. But what is the appetite, sir, as far as privatization is concerned now? And there was a list that had been identified, that had been put down. Where do things stand on that front?
I said that disinvestment has two legs. One is that, you know, minority stake sale, another is the, you know, outright privatization. If you really see the minority stake sale, they have been going on steadily. You have, you know, OFS in Cochin shipyard, you had earlier in this. In Hindustan Zinc, you know, there was some dilution. And this goes on. And it goes in a calibrated manner, as you said. And then, of course, there were, you know, listings. You had NTPC Green, which came, and the full thing, and it's now a very major company. And at the time also, we had announced that many more green companies will come downstream of those, some of those brown companies. So that part, Irida was listed earlier. So I think disinvestment is going on in a calibrated manner.
More listings expected in 2025, Mr. Chawla and Mr. Pandey?
No, I mean, obviously, if there are candidates, why not?
Okay, why not? But you know, on the larger issue as far as the dividends are concerned, between the RBI, between PSBs as well as financial institutions, 2.56 lakh crore rupees, I think that is what the government is put down in terms of the number cumulatively as far as the dividends are concerned. How much are you hoping for the RBI to deliver? They've given you a bonanza the last time around as well.
No, I will not hazard a guess, you know, these are numbers. See, point is on the receipt numbers, which are other than tax. See, when it is a tax numbers and other numbers are slightly different. In tax numbers, you have a, you know, you have a legislation backing you. You know the taxes will come. It will depend upon how the economy pans out. In case of other numbers, there is a lot of things which happens is subject to profitability, subject to this. So there are certain numbers, and we hope that, you know, as soon as, you know, these things are declared, you will come to know. But in CPSCs, he will be able to clarify you on dividends.
What is the expectation, Mr. Chawla?
So this year, we will not only meet, but slightly exceed the target. And next year, we have a slightly more ambitious target, and we will achieve that as well.
Will achieve that. A quick question. There is no provision that's been made as far as the LPG under recoveries are concerned to oil marketing companies. Why is that the case? Because that was clearly the demand that was put on the table as well.
Well, I think they will work out, because the oil thing is, you know, going up and down and depends upon the market. And they will definitely, you know, sort of work it out, you know, in what manner.
So the OMCs will have to work it out?
I mean, OMC and the government normally work it. Normally, OMC work it out initially because, you know, they have a certain way of...
But you haven't provided anything for them in the budget.
No, but whenever there is a need and something, it is additionally provided. In terms of fertilizer also, sometimes, you know, the prices move differently and then additional thing has been provided.
So the cushion that you've got on the expenditure side, that is what has given you the ability to be able to do the personal income tax cut?
Well, if you really see the personal income tax, I mean, if you look at our numbers, then, you know, we have got about 20% average growth rate last few years in personal income tax. Buoyancy has been 2+. And if you really look at the numbers this year, that what we have projected buoyancy is now projected as 1.4, and the growth we have projected as 14%. So we have done that moderation in growth, and our numbers are realistic.
Numbers are realistic, but I'm asking you the cushion that you were able to get to be able to deliver this, 1 lakh crore rupee revenue foregone to enable the tax cuts to come in. That's been on account of the fact that I wouldn't say expenditure compression, but you've saved on the expenditure side.
I would agree to that. I'm only saying that, the revenue side, we could have, had we not given out this, sort of relief, then probably our revenue figures would have been higher.
Yeah.
So we are balancing the thing, and we are achieving 4.4% number, as we promised.
On fiscal deficit, absolutely, and that is something that has, of course, been given a big thumbs up on the consolidation front. But on asset monetization, 10 lakh crore rupee, that's the target that's been put down by the government. 5 lakhs, I think, 5 lakh crores was the last target. Close to being able to achieve that?
Yes, we are close to achieving. In fact, we may slightly exceed the target this year, and we hope to do the same next year.
So in terms of the identified list that will be up for monetization as part of the announcement that came in today, when should we realistically expect things to move on that front?
I think some homework has been done, some more is being done, and for this year, you've already learned, most of it has been announced. And for next year, we'll probably move, and you will see it very quickly as the year dawns.
So let me ask you, on balance at the end of what has been delivered today, and there's been a lot of announcements that have come in to take the reform process forward, some with specific timelines, but some work in progress, including things like the National Manufacturing Mission and so on and so forth. Where does this leave the economy? What do you see as the tailwinds that the budget has provided, and what do you believe are the headwinds that you will have to contend with?
Well, the tailwinds, as you say, that first we have really, sort of given that money to the middle class, to everyone. In fact, one of the things that you must appreciate that it is across the board, and it is slab, so it fits in well with the new reform bill, the new IT bill that we are going to bring. The second, of course, is that we are, sort of looking at all the critical areas where the investments are required for increasing productivity. We are looking at, as I said, 4 engines, the fuel, the reforms as a fuel. We have looked at taxation reforms. We are looking at financial reforms. We are looking at regulatory reforms, and they're very important because, a lot of friction points, a lot of pain points we must remove. We are continuing with our Capex. And I'm again reiterating, it's not to say that we have really abandoned. The point is that we must deliver and implement.
Yeah.
I mean, merely we are showing the numbers that won't do.
Fair point.
But we have added, huge amount of roads. If you really see as we speak, many roads are getting built, many railway things are happening. You have huge number of Prime Minister Awas Yojana housing, which is gone in. You have a massive Jal Jeevan mission, which is happening. You have 1.5 lakh scheme, which is zero interest loan for the states that is happening, subject to reforms. And we are reforming. While we are doing is we are reforming, deregulating. Wherever we can do settle, even in taxes, even in tariffs, voluntary compliance, trying to do that, spur the animal spirit, spur the entrepreneurial spirit. Startups.
Do you believe that you're finally going to be able to unleash the animal spirits, and what will that mean as far as the gross fixed capital formation is concerned? Are we likely to now move beyond that 30% mark?
Well, if I were the animal, I'll be spirited.
Well, no, but on a serious note, do you believe that we're now going to move the needle on that number?
On what number?
On the the gross fixed capital formation number, sir, which has been at about 30% for the last few years.
Well, I think there are CIA surveys, there are other surveys which show that there have been uptick in order books. There have been capacity improvement in capacity utilization, and I think the demand will build up, the jobs will be created, and there will be more incentive for the private sector to further invest. So both saving and investments must rise, and that should be our continuous strategy.
So 6.8%?
Well, I won't really go out with a number, but I would say that definitely we will spur that, whatever numbers that we said is trend growth rate. The question is, can we push up the trend?
Can we push up the trend? But very clear, unambiguous comment they're coming in from the Finance Secretary, not abandoning Capex. You need to look at the Capex allocation with the center and the states together on an aggregate basis, and you believe that the tax cuts that have been delivered will spur consumption and accelerate the growth momentum. And IDBI Bank, hopefully the bids will come in by March. So in this financial year, that's the hope at this point in time, but we will have to wait to see whether it is finally delivered or not. Mr. Chawla and Mr. Pandey, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here. Today we have limited time, but we will of course continue this conversation on the CNBC-TV18 budget verdict. Appreciate you joining us here at our budget headquarters. We are going to take a break here, but the budget conversations will continue. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment. You're watching CNBC-TV18, India's budget headquarters.
Taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy and innovation, securing energy supplies, promoting exports and nurturing innovation. For this journey of development, our four powerful engines are agriculture, MSME, investments and exports. The fuel, our reforms, our guiding spirit, inclusivity, and the destination, Viksit Bharat. This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness. The domains are taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector, and regulatory reforms. Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B.
In the Union Budget 2025, we are joined by Union Minister Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri. Sir, thanks for speaking with CNBC TV18. How do you look at the key highlights from the budget and its impact on the common person?
I would say in overall terms, it's an excellent budget. It's a budget whose impact in the short, medium and long term will be to spur and boost our journey to becoming a Viksit Bharat, which is the Prime Minister's sankalp. But more than that, you see, if you look at this budget, one immediate temptation is to look at it in terms of the relief provided to the salaried middle class. The fact that you've raised the exemption limit from 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs is a talking point. But I think there's something deeper in this. You've also adjusted the slabs. You've also made major announcement for centers of excellence in artificial intelligence, for the steel, for the shipbuilding sector, for agriculture, for manufacturing. So you look at all those announcements for startups. You know, if you add another 10-20,000 crores for something like that, that's a lot of money. The PLI scheme which was started, we never had any electrolyzer production here. When you provided 19,700 crores sometime back at the PLI scheme, it's taken off. Today, this budget also seeks to boost the public-private partnership. It also seeks to provide overall momentum. But the one talking point which is gaining more attention is because people generally thought, you know, the corporate sector is doing well. The, people who are at the economically weaker section, they are being provided 3 meals of dry ration in a day, and the middle class is being shortchanged. Not correct. We've just appointed a pay commission. That pay commission will result in major boost, relief, even for pensioners like me. There will be pension enhancements, hopefully with retrospective effect. But today, the limit Exemption limit going to 12 lakhs is particularly welcome, and I want to remind those who are continuing with their carping criticism that when Indira Ji was Prime Minister, sometime in 1972 or 73, she raised the taxation limit. So if you earned 12 lakhs of rupees at that point of time, you ended up paying 11 lakhs 29,000 by way of tax. That was the highest rate. Now, कहाँ वहाँ कहाँ अभी की सिचुएशन है और इस पर क्रिटिसाइज करना, और केजरीवाल जी लगे हुए हैं. अरे भाई केजरीवाल जी, आपने तो मिडिल क्लास का सोचा ही नहीं. आपने अगर मिडिल, अब कह रहे नहीं मैंने तो 10 मांगी थी 12 मिल गई, which means we've got a deeper and understanding of what needs to be done, and there's a timing for everything. Earlier budgets had a tremendous focus on capex. Capex से ये फायदा होता, capex budget 30% बढ़ता गया, as a result of which infrastructure received a boost, employment received a boost. If you're constructing by way of an example, a refinery, not only will cement and steel receive a boost, employment will receive a boost, all population within 100 kilometers of that will receive a boost. So you look at what all we've done as a country, our overall capacity has risen. Now this, using nuclear energy for energy transition, again, a phenomenal development. The previous government made an attempt, but not a single dollar of commercial contracting took place because they lost the narrative after that. Manmohan Singh ji was willing to stake the future of his government, and yet kuch nahi hua. And with Modi ji, whatever he guarantees, whatever he promises, 500 guarantee diya, 499, we met. So it's not Delhi specific, it's not related to what the Congress party is saying. This is a new vision. Did any Congress leader or any other political leader in the country ever talked about India as a developed nation? Inka the contribution was always in the other side. They always doubted that we could do. When we talked about becoming a $5 trillion economy, they say, kaise hoga? Now that you're a $4 trillion economy, they are not even talking. We talked about $5 trillion and $10 trillion and viksit bharat. But these guys have been on the wrong side of the argument.
Speaking of the petroleum sector, there is an allocation of rupees 5,600 crores for strategic petroleum reserves. On the other hand, there hasn't been any compensation for OMCs for their losses.
Let me tell you very clearly, we are committed to that. Even when we got it from 28,000 crores, there was an under-recovery on LPG. We gave them 22,000 crores. You don't need to make a budgetary provision. We can go to the finance ministry. Otherwise, if somebody behaves like a good corporate citizen, the OMCs, and they've had under-recovery, we will compensate them. We are committed to that.
Also, the subsidy for PM Ujjwala has trended down, what we have witnessed so far, despite an increase in the number of beneficiaries. Also, do you feel there is going to be an increase in discretionary spend post the budget?
No, there is going to be enough provision for both LPG and that. Don't worry about it at all. You see, two things are happening. Insofar as natural gas is concerned, prices are coming down. Insofar as LPG, which is a product of a refinery, etc., we will look at that. There's no issue of no anxiety on that score.
My final question to you, speaking of discretionary spend, speaking of future growth prospects, how do you look at the current proposition with respect to India's import basket, particularly with respect to petroleum and also with respect to the focus on exports, which is quite much visible in the budget?
See, India is a happening place for energy. Whether it's ENP, it will go up. Whether our gas production goes up by 18% every year. There was a dull decade between 2006 and 16. We are now getting more and more fine. I keep saying there's a Guyana to be found in the Andaman Sea or several Guyanas to be found. As we go forward, we will continue because the economic activity is growing at such a pace. Even as our ENP goes up, our consumption is going up, therefore imports will go up. But we are also exporting. Some of our companies are major exporters. As we proceed forward, we are very confident. We think more and more crude oil is going to be available in the global market. Prices will come down. And I'm pretty confident that energy will continue to be a big success story.
What's the big direction of the union budget and what does it have for the telecom sector, for the Northeast region and for India Post as well? Joining us right now is Union Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia, who handles all these portfolios. Mr. Scindia, for the last few months, since the time you took over the communications and telecom portfolio, you have been looking at how to overhaul India Post and make it a logistics powerhouse. Now, what push does this budget give to that exercise?
Well, I think it's very important to, first of all, understand and most importantly, at the outset, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister for giving that prominence and that emphasis on India Post and its importance in being probably the largest distribution channel that India has. We have 1,65,000 POSs, points of sale, almost about 3 lakh Gramin Dak Sevaks across the length and breadth of our country that do only one thing: Dak Seva, Jana Seva. And it's very important for India Post also to move in line with what's happening globally. And what's happening globally across the world is that postal organizations slowly evolving and moving towards being logistics organizations and logistics companies, specifically because of the huge emphasis on e-commerce, and e-commerce becoming a very, very large portion of their total market. And the same is going to happen in India. Today, e-commerce may be only limited to maybe tier 1 cities, but it's going to be 6 months or a year at max where it's going to go to tier 2 and tier 3. And that's where India Post has the largest distribution network. And so therefore we have a plan in place, or we are working on a plan, which is a business process re-engineering exercise, where we've formed our India Post organization into 6 verticals, which define our products between mails, parcels, international mails, your PLI, life insurance schemes, your post office savings bank, and your C2C, government citizen services. And across these 6 verticals, we formed also a technology group that's going to be looking at, because digitalization is going to be a very important facet of this. So net, we'll have a long conversation some other day, but we're looking at a full transformation of how India Post functions, making it seamless between customer and service, and the budgetary allocation towards that imperative is extremely important. As far as telecom is concerned, there again I'd like to thank the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, where they have looked at BharatNet becoming the key purveyor of information and digitization, all the way down to government schools as well as to primary health centers. Right. And we've got a very expansive BharatNet, amended BharatNet program, where we have a capital allocation of close to about 1,39,000 crores, where we're going to connect every Gram Panchayat in this country, and there are over 2.5 lakh of them. And in the second stage, every village in our country with OFC fiber, and make sure that the digital revolution doesn't begin with tier 1, but begins actually with tier 3 and tier 2.
Minister Sindhya, again, coming back to India Post and making it a logistics powerhouse, when you're going about this restructuring or re-engineering exercise, what is the amount of money that this entire exercise would need, and what is the economic opportunity that you feel is there? And if you had to quantify that economic opportunity.
I'm not at liberty to divulge to you my Capex requirement at this point of time. But suffice to say that you're going to be working on this on 2 important footings. One is the digitization of India Post. So we are coming out with software 2.0 for India Post, where you're going to be seamless end-to-end. We've got a capital allocation already, not in this budget, but in prior budgets, of close to 5,000 crores for that. We should be coming out with our beta product in the next 8 months or so. We've got a system integrator in place. And not only that, I have now put together within India Post, for the first time in the history of India Post, a Chief Technology Officer. So I have a CTO, and then I have a Vice Technology Officer who's working with each vertical. And so that there is complete synthesis between the demand of each vertical, which are very, very different products, along with the view and the thesis of the organization as a whole. The second is really to look at our infrastructure and upgrading our infrastructure. And so we have close to about 26,000 odd branch post offices, including head offices, that will require a certain amount of infrastructure spend, and then a whole bunch of sub post offices. So it's going to be a combination of both, along with the business process re-engineering exercise. So there's going to be a softer aspect to it and a harder aspect.
And private sector involvement as well?
Not to begin with. Yes, private sector involvement on maybe on the advisory side and maybe on the software integration. But the software is being made also by our India Post company, which is CEPT.
Okay.
Inclusive development. C. Invigorate private sector investments. D. Uplift household sentiments. And E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As we complete the first quarter of the 21st century, continuing geopolitical headwinds suggest lower global economic growth over the medium term. However, our aspiration for a viksit Bharat inspires us, and the transformative work we have done during our government's first 2 terms guides us to march forward resolutely. Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions. The great Telugu poet and playwright Gurujada Appa Rao had said, "Deshamante matti kadoy, deshamante manushuloy," meaning a country is not just its soil, a country is its people. In line with this, for us, Viksit Bharat encompasses zero poverty, 100% quality good school education, access to high quality, affordable and comprehensive health care, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% women in economic activities, and farmers making our country the food basket of the world. In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, Youth, Annadata, and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and further. I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. I propose to, 1, remove 7 tariff rates. This is over and above the 7 tariff rates removed in 23-24 budget. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 4.8% of the GDP.
ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है। ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा।
ये भारत सरकार का बजट है कि बिहार सरकार का बजट है? आपने बिहार के अलावा किसी और प्रदेश का नाम सुना वित्त मंत्री जी के पूरे बजट भाषण में?
The infrastructure is not going for the rest of the country. It's only going towards Bihar because we all know that this year is the Bihar election. So basically, for essence, and Maharashtra has been ignored, and Tamil Nadu, there's not a single word for Tamil Nadu or for any other southern states.
Sweetness for the middle class, a firm hold on fiscal consolidation and continuity on Capex. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget aims to give a fillip to consumption by putting money in the hands of the middle class. Also, as they say, no news is good news for the markets. A status quo is maintained on capital gains tax as was expected. The big headline change is, of course, in the income tax slabs. The government will forego 1 lakh crore rupees in direct tax revenue this year on account of the cut in personal income tax. That really is the big headline that sums up the mood of Budget 2025. To take the discussion forward, we're joined by KV Subramaniam, India's Executive Director at the IMF, also India's former Chief Economic Advisor, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Executive Chairperson and founder of Biocon and Biocon Biologics, Christian D. Guzman, Senior Vice President and India Sovereign Analyst at Moody's Ratings, Vinay Chatterjee, Chairman of the CII Mission on Infrastructure, FICCI President Harshvardhan Agarwal, Vishesh Chandiok, CEO of Grant Thornton with us as well. Gentlemen, Kiran, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. KV Subramaniam, let me come to you first because you've been tweeting up a storm on the multiplier impact of the personal income tax cut and the benefits it could accrue to growth. You know, I have to say that I took some of your numbers and put them to the finance ministry budget makers. They were a bit more conservative in their own estimates on what the implication could be, what the impact can be. KV Subramaniam, over to you.
Shereen, you would remember around this time I was in the studios and I had mentioned, and you'll remember very well, that the fiscal deficit will come out to be less than budgeted, which is exactly what has happened. You know, having been there in the ministry, we've had this principle of under-promising and over-delivering that has started, with the, very transparently presenting the budget numbers. If you recall, earlier, there used to be these off-balance sheet items that used to be presented during my tenure that was removed, and we're presenting transparently. I think that same principle applies here. I think as I'm sure you would have actually seen the tweet, I have done the numbers. I've been conservative there, because the actual savings rate for the middle class, recent data, 2023 data is 18%, and I've actually instead used 20%, which gives me a lower multiplier. If this 1 lakh crore number, I think, which has been announced by the finance minister as the foregone revenue is correct, and I think there is reason to be correct. Actually, as I said, the finance ministry tends to now under-promise and over-deliver. Then I think the impact on consumption would be about 4.8% of GDP, and overall GDP itself 2.7% additional.
2.7% additional on GDP. As I said, I put those numbers to the finance ministry, and of course, they didn't bite the bait on that. But that's as far as consumption is concerned. Let me come to Vinayak Chatterjee, the bucket man. CNBC TV18 is trending today, but as is Vinayak Chatterjee because of a tweet that is viral, Vinayak. And your quibble on Capex, I put that to the government, and their response was, look, you've got to look at it at an aggregate basis of what we're doing between the center and the states. If you do that, we're up 17%.
That's not correct. I think let me step back and talk about a serious issue that has emanated from the infrastructure maths of this budget. For almost a decade now, and actually from the beginning of this government, there has been a very stated, well-articulated, well-implemented policy that it is public outlays on infrastructure that will be the pump primer for economic growth. And on this basis, year after year after year, we have seen 30% growth in infrastructure allocations. 5 to 7.5, 7.5 to 10. Last year was a bit of a shocker with 10%. But this time, to see that there is a near zero increase in allocation then brings to question that is there a reset of economic thinking? The question is, which I pose to you, which I pose to your viewers, and I have posed to the government and analysts, is that if infrastructure is no more the pump primer of the economy, what is it then? And is this a reset of national economic planning strategy?
I asked the Finance Secretary just before you arrived exactly that question.
What was his answer?
We are not abandoning Capex. Look at it as an aggregate between what we're doing at the central level as well as what we're doing with states.
So the thumb rule is very simple. And you can check the maths, which I've shared with you every year. If the center does 10, then a matching 10 is done by 3 constituents together, which is states, plus private sector, plus what is called EBR, extra budgetary resources. Yeah. These 3 things together do another 10. So you get 10 plus 10, 20, right? So if you do 0, it is then, and they're not going to do 10. So it's not logic that holds. The fact is that the central spend on infrastructure is the market driver for all the states as well as private sector as EBR. It is a market maker. And therefore, this is a very serious question when you stand back and look at the big economic picture, forget all the little announcements.
Yeah.
Is this a reset of economic strategy for the nation?
Okay. KV Subramaniam, would you agree with Vinayak's strategy that that's the signal that the government is sending out? And I go back again, you were here with me in the studio last year. The then Finance Secretary, Mr. Somanathan, had also stated that, look, we are perhaps reaching our limit as far as what the government can do on Capex is concerned. How would you read the Capex allocation?
Is raising is something that absolutely needs to be responded to. If you look at the budget allocation and, the actual numbers, for instance, that was achieved, the budget allocation was 11.1 lakh crore and the actual amount was 10.18. So there seems to be, and, while part of it could be attributed, let's say, to the election, the first quarter elections, but I think, and I'm not part of the government now, so I don't know the true reason, and maybe Vinayak can throw light on this. Maybe there are some capacity constraints that are actually being hit in the infrastructure ministries being able to spend this. And I think it is important, therefore, to be able to sort of provide numbers that can be really achieved. What you don't want is, a significant increase in the budgeted amount, but not actually being implemented. So that's an aspect. I think, overall, actually, I would say that the focus on infrastructure must continue. I think the complementary aspect, therefore, is to examine the capacity in the infrastructure ministries. If there are some constraints in then being able to spend the amounts, I think those need to be removed so that we can renew again and increase the budget allocation. That said, though, let me add, actually, I think I don't mind, even from an economic strategy perspective, actually the focus on consumption, because one of the engines that actually had not been firing as well has been, it's been private investment. And, investors, basically industry, kept saying that, it's the consumption is not increasing and that is why, we're not investing. Now, I think, industry should have absolutely no excuses whatsoever to actually say that, we're not investing. I hope they don't come back and say, we're waiting for the monetary policy to change. Actually, I think, the spur in consumption, increase in consumption, as I actually have tweeted, I think should definitely be a spur. And you do remember that when we talk about the virtuous cycle, right, consumption is an important element. Yes, it is private investment that is the first trigger, or overall investment that is a trigger. But I think working on another macro variable, consumption, is something that will help. So I don't see this as a change in fiscal policy or overall economic strategy, but just sort of tailoring to having the ears on the ground and responding to something that is required at this point.
Okay. Let me get Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw into the conversation as well. Kiran, what's the big takeaway? What do you believe Budget 2025 is likely to do for growth, but more importantly, also for inclusive growth?
So, Shereen, this is a very interesting panel discussion that we are having. I think the government is definitely focused on a couple of areas, consumption being the prime, and then followed by investment, innovation and employment. And I think in terms of innovation, which has always been my pet fetish, I think I would like to see more details on the 20,000 crores outlay that they have announced for private sector innovation. My worry is that, we need to have deployment of these kind of allocations, because innovation is going to be the way to go for India, because I think moving from volume to value is very important for India. And innovation in many sectors is going to be key. I'm glad that the government has come up with a mission mode for AI, quantum, and I'd like it to extend to other areas like synthetic biology and other areas of the biotech sector. I'd like to see the fine print there. But in terms of inclusive growth, I think the government has done a lot, at least in healthcare. Trying to get rural healthcare beefed up, trying to provide access and affordable access to life-saving medicines. Though there, I don't quite see how just customs duty exemption is going to do that. I think it has to be translation into GST as well. So that's what I really would like to see from this budget. So overall, it's a good budget, but I think we also need to see it in context with the geopolitics and geoeconomics of our time.
And that's what I was. You've preempted my question, Kiran, because I was going to ask you just that. We've got the Trump tariff threat, and pharmaceuticals is a sector that he has identified as a sector that he intends to go after from a tariff point of view. What should we prepare ourselves for? How concerned are you with that threat?
So, of course, he gave the pharma threat more to, Canada more than India. And I think India needs to position itself as a partner and a strategic partner that provides health security to the US. So I think levying a tariff on pharmaceuticals from India is not going to really benefit the US. So I think we need to play it very carefully.
Yes, we will need to play it carefully, of course, when we do finally see the details coming in from the Trump administration. But Christian, let me come to you with what you have made of the budget numbers, with the fiscal consolidation target, as well as the glide path and the move towards debt.
Well, thanks for having me. I think in general, I think what we can say that there are some positive things and there are perhaps some not so positive things. On the positive side, I think the commitment to ongoing fiscal consolidation, as represented by the revised estimates for 24-25, as well as the expected outcome for 25-26, that's really supportive of, I would say, policy credibility. Now, I think perhaps what's not so positive is I think there are still some questions about the support to the economy coming from the announced tax measures. I think in particular, the revenue buoyancy that is sort of coming out from the government's projections is a bit, I guess the outlook here is a bit uncertain. I guess the way we see it is that when in US dollar terms, people who make less than about $14,000 a year, that's sort of 12 lakh income per year, are going to be exempted. But GDP per capita is $3,000. So what you're seeing here perhaps is a very large and significant erosion of the revenue base. But yet against this prospective erosion of the revenue base, the government is still projecting very large increases, very healthy increases in tax revenue, notwithstanding the estimates for foregone revenue. So I do think that there is some downside risk here to achieving that 4.4% of GDP target. But the signaling here, I would say, is quite positive.
Signaling quite positive. Vishesh Chandyok also with us here in the studio. Vishesh, many thanks for joining us. On balance, what does Budget 2025 deliver on?
I think it delivers on exactly what the economic survey talked about. And if you look at the preface to the economic survey, it talked about growth through deregulation.
Yeah.
It was just terrific to see the words being used there. How can we get out of the way of business? How can we give business back their time and mental bandwidth? How can we move away from this guilty until proven innocent? And I think the budget delivered that simplicity, predictability in so many areas. Of course, more to be seen with the income tax bill coming, which she gave us some preview today. She said it'll be half the size of the current act. the finance minister also said that we need to move towards justice versus punishment and thinking. And then if you look at specific areas, I think the private equity community, both category 1, category 2 funds, were asking for that clarity. Is the income, business income or capital gains?
Yeah.
I think that's being clarified as capital gains. The question remains, is the carry for partners within those funds also capital gains? That'll be a real bonanza, but we'll see. So many other areas, the 4-year ability to look back on revised returns, the 3-year safe harbor on transfer pricing. So many such areas where there is more predictability, that recognition, perhaps even taking a leaf out of what we're seeing in America. How do we really get out of the way of business and deregulate to power business to deliver growth?
Yes, and that exercise will take a year once that commission is set up and gets down to work. But Christian, I want to come back to you with the growth expectation. 10.1 nominal growth, that is what the budget is working with at this point in time. And my conversation with the budget makers, the economic survey projection is between 6.3 to 6.8. Post the budget, they do believe that they're probably going to be able to deliver on the upper end.
I think we would sort of agree with that assessment. We're not going to make any material changes to our real GDP growth forecast of 6.6% for the upcoming fiscal year. We do think, in essence, that we had seen a trough in growth a couple of quarters ago, and that there will be a rebound in growth up to an average of 6.6% for the next fiscal year, based on things like support from the government budget, as well as some normalization in terms of the liquidity issues that are in the banking system, as well as perhaps some support from monetary policy. So I think we would broadly agree with those growth assumptions.
Broadly agree with the growth assumptions. Kiran, I want to come back to you with one of the announcements and the stated objectives of the budget. Heal in India and the medical tourism opportunity. Also very specific mention, and I know that this is something that probably caught your eye on cancer hospitals. The government making that very clear as part of its healthcare plan, and a good one at that. So overall, this Heal in India opportunity and the fact that the government has decided to focus on it.
Yeah, so I think, medical tourism is something which India should be focused on and is very good at delivering on. But I think, as I said, we need to see the kind of details as to how is the government going to bolster this medical tourism aspect. Secondly, as far as the focus on cancer drugs is concerned, whilst they have reduced the basic customs duty or exempted the basic customs duty on cancer drugs, is it really going to benefit patients in the way it should? Because I really think that I would like to see a exemption from GST for cancer patients to make a real difference. So, whilst it's a step in the right direction, it's not enough.
Okay, Harshvardhan Agarwal here with us as well. Does this now finally get the private sector, as Krishnamurthy Subramanian was pointing out, to do more in terms of setting up new capacities? Also, the demand boost that was hoped for, do you believe that the budget will now deliver on that?
Certainly, Shereen. I think, once the extra money comes in the hand of the consumers, obviously they are going to spend, and which is going to boost the consumption. And what I believe, once the consumption increases, the thing of private investment, that should also get a boost, and ultimately also giving a boost to employment. And once it gives a boost to employment, so again, more consumption. So it's a whole circle, which I see, and that is why I am very excited about this step of the no tax till 12 lakh, and in the hand of the consumers, 1 lakh crore rupees is going to come, which is a very, very big amount. And overall, I see a lot of impact of this on the economy.
Yes, that is the hope and the expectation. Christian, a quick word in on Capex and, whether you have any concerns on the allocation as far as Capex is concerned before I get closing comments here from my guests.
Now, I hear that, yes, there is indeed perhaps 0% increase with regards to last year's budget allocation versus this year. But I think the important thing to note is perhaps if the government were to successfully execute next year's budget allocation for infrastructure, that would be a 10% increase over the estimates for 24-25. That would be a significant increase in growth. But having said that, I think KV Subramaniam did point to the issues around capacity, because there was a large degree of underspending in the current fiscal year, in the fiscal year that's ending in March. So those do need to be addressed so that you do get that nice kicker to growth.
Yes, Vishesh Chandioka, final comment from you in terms of the kicker that the budget provides, the headline that you take away.
I think the headline I take away is comprehensive. There's 6 ecosystems we believe at Grant Thornton that are important to shape viksit Bharat, vibrant Bharat. Climate, you had that 100 gigawatts of power. Inclusion, you had those 100 poorest, least productive agri-districts. Automation, you had that investment in AI, deep tech. FDI, you had the insurance, 100% on private capital. You had, the AIFs that I talked about, and lastly, regulatory. It's those 6 ecosystems that need to be shaped in order to shape a better India. And I think the budget touched on all of those.
Yes, it certainly did touch on all of those. The final comment to you, Vinayak Chatterjee, you of course heard from the government as well, and you've got your response.
Look, the near zero increase in the infrastructure budget has been attributed to two issues. To move towards fiscal consolidation, get that 4.4%, and because there has been an unspent amount from last year's allocation. The second one is serious, because if as a nation that's trying to pull itself and economic growth and pull people out of poverty, create jobs by spending money that is available, is unable to spend it because of certain constraints at the central and state level, that is a serious issue that we need to discuss in the weeks and months ahead on discussions on your panel. The second point, and I'm going to stop here, is that across the budget speech, there are very strong hints of wanting PPPs to come back again, public-private partnerships. There are 6 very strong, shall we say, interventions mentioned. I won't read them out for you, but to get PPP back will require very hard work by the political and the bureaucratic establishment, something I know that they've just realized, and a starting position would be to once again start reading the Kelkar Committee report on PPP revitalization and start implementing the recommendations. And that report was commissioned by this government alone.
Yes, and it is there to be operationalized. So the work has already been done. But revitalizing PPP, Triple P India, I remember from many budgets ago, that was the buzzword, and that is what we're hoping will
500 crore allocation for PPP by Arun Jaitley in his 4th July maiden budget.
Yes, I remember that very, very well. But Vinayak Chatterjee, Vishesh Chandioka, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Christian Guzman, Harshvardhan Agarwal and KV Subramaniam, many thanks for joining us here on the CNBC-TV18 Budget Town Hall with your take on Budget 2025. But there's been plenty for startups as well. India startup community here with their budget verdict on the Budget Baatcheet, the Startup Policy Forum in Bengaluru, bringing together startups to decode the budget. My colleague Jude is there. Jude.
Indian startups managed to find favor with Budget 2025 as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman made a series of announcements aimed at the overall growth of the startup ecosystem.
A deep tech fund of funds will also be explored, now a center of excellence in artificial intelligence for education will be set up with a total outlay of 500 crores.
A fresh infusion of 10,000 crore rupees towards the government's fund of funds for startups was perhaps the biggest takeaway from the union budget, simply because it comes at a time when VC funding has slowed and startups are starting to think outside the box to secure capital.
And I think putting development capital like SIDBI, other sources of capital, fund of funds was needed.
This was expected, and there was a lot of expectation that we're going to see this another round, another tranche of 10,000 crores coming in. The fact that it did come is a very, very welcome move.
There were other timely announcements too, like a first of its kind deep tech fund, or the establishment of 5 centers of excellence for skilling, or a center of excellence for AI at a budgetary outlay of 500 crore rupees. But some feel there was scope for a lot more in terms of fiscal allocation on this front.
Now 500 crores is a dip in the pond, but you know, a good start nevertheless.
I was honestly expecting more on the AI front. That's the flavor of the season. But that being said, there's only so much the government can do. I think the private sector should pick up more in terms of Capex.
So with more or less equal weightage given to funding, deep tech, AI and compliance, Budget 2025 is widely being regarded as good news for Indian startups.
Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy and innovation, securing energy supplies, promoting exports and nurturing innovation. For this journey of development, our four powerful engines are agriculture, MSME, investments and exports. The fuel, our reforms, our guiding spirit, inclusivity, and the destination, Viksit Bharat. This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness. The domains are taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector, and regulatory reforms. Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B. Secure inclusive development, C. Invigorate private sector investments, D. Uplift household sentiments, and E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As we complete the first quarter of the 21st century, continuing geopolitical headwinds suggest lower global economic growth over the medium term. However, our aspiration for a Viksit Bharat inspires us, and the transformative work we have done during our government's first 2 terms guides us to march forward resolutely. Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions. The great Telugu poet and playwright Gurujada Apparao had said, "Deshamante matti kadoy, deshamante manushuloy." I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. I propose to 1. Remove 7 tariff rates. This is over and above the 7 tariff rates removed in 23-24 budget. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 4.8% of the GDP.
ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है। ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा।
ये भारत सरकार का बजट है कि बिहार सरकार का बजट है? आपने बिहार के अलावा किसी और प्रदेश का नाम सुना वित्त मंत्री जी के पूरे बजट भाषण में?
The infrastructure is not going for the rest of the country. It's only going towards BR because we all know that this year is the BR election. So basically, for Essence and Maharashtra has been ignored, and Tamil Nadu, there's not a single word for Tamil Nadu or for any other southern states.
Tax sweeteners for the middle class, a firm footing on fiscal consolidation and continuity on Capex. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget aims to give a fillip to consumption by putting money in the hands of the middle class. Also, as they say, no news is good news for the market, so status quo being maintained there on capital gains tax, as was expected. The big headline is the change in income tax slabs. The government will forego 1 lakh crore rupees in direct tax revenue this year on account of providing that fillip. Joining us now on the program, Sriram Balasubramaniam, economist and author of the book Dharmanomics. Also with us, Sanjay Nair, chairman of Sovereign Investment Fund and president of ASSOCHAM, and Kunal Behel, the co-founder of Ace Vector. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Sanjay Nair, to you first. The budget, the impetus on consumption, the continuity on Capex and fiscal consolidation. We'll get to Sanjay in just a second, but Sriram, let me come to you. As I was pointing out, clear priority on consumption, continued focus on Capex, and of course, sticking with the fiscal consolidation roadmap. Sum up the budget for us.
Thanks, Shereen. Thanks for having me. Indeed, I think they've struck a very good balance. The entire tax breaks have been calibrated very well. They've been, in fact, targeted. Very few people are talking about it because the number of people below 12 lakhs is a large section who actually are part of the so-called middle class. So it's a huge relief and a boost, I think, for the middle class. Though it's belated, I think it's been calibrated very well. And of course, I think it's very important that the fiscal, deficit is maintained, and then the fiscal plan that we had post-COVID is also retained. Because note that in many countries, and also in India in the past, when such tax breaks are given, that there's a toss on the macroeconomic picture. And in this particular case, I think strong macroeconomic fundamentals and the program or the plan to retain that picture is also very impressive. And I think it's also important to understand that the real game is probably in the next few months of how much of these savings are actually going to be transferred to consumption. And I think that's where the next part of the budget, the entire deregulation and the entire sort of regulatory upheaval, the commission that's been formed, is very important, because a lot of these savings can either go to resolving some of the debts that individual has, or investment, or they could still stay in the bank account. So it's important for policymakers to sort of transfer this potential consumption because of these savings into actual consumption. And I think a lot of the follow-up policies also seem to enable such transfer of consumption. Professor K.V. Subramanian's assessment, who was earlier in your show, alludes to almost 2.7% of an increase in GDP because of these moves, with a consumption multiplier above 5. Even if we take a lower number, say a consumption multiplier of about 4, we would still get about 2.5% of a direct impact on GDP. And of course, there are a lot of indirect effects. A lot of sectors which will benefit because of this, because of this consumption boom. So I think overall it's a very calibrated, very mature budget, and I feel it addresses a wide range of areas, and it is done in a very proactive manner. I think lastly, the finance minister deserves a lot of credit. Honorable Finance Minister, she's been under a lot of pressure for many years, and this is her 8th consecutive budget. So I think she deserves a lot of credit for really going the mile and trying to create a sort of a consumption boom in this country.
Well, that is right. It is the 8th consecutive budget delivered by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Kunal, let me come to you now. There's plenty there as far as startups are concerned and for the startup ecosystem. What's your big takeaway? How does this move the needle?
Yeah, thanks, Shereen. Thanks for having me. Look, we're a startup nation, and I think this was a startup budget in many ways. I feel that amongst other things, which we'll talk about, but the biggest needle mover is the replenishment of the 10,000 crore fund of funds. I remember 10 years ago, I was actually in the room when the fund of funds was actually announced. And a lot of people sort of rolled their eyes saying, I don't think anything was going to come out of this. This is right when this government had first been elected in 14. And 10 years later, 140 venture capital funds got seeded by this fund of funds. And as a result of this 10,000 crores, it ended up being, using the Honorable Prime Minister's words, proved to be a big force multiplier. And as a result, 91,000 crores got raised by these domestic venture capital firms, which then invested all this money in domestic startups. So imagine the kind of impact this has had on the startup ecosystem. And for the government to realize the impact that has had and making sure that this was not a one and done scheme, they've replenished it. And I actually hope this gets deployed not in 10 years, but in 3 to 5 years, and they replenish it again, because this can be an enduring track for seeding the bedrock of domestic venture capital in India, which still accounts for a minority of investments in the Indian startup ecosystem. And if you want to be not subject to the vacillations of global financial markets and global funding winters that then thereafter impact our startup ecosystem, we need that strong domestic capital bedrock. So I feel that's a big one. The second one, which is also in the realm of capital, but of a different kind of capital, which is the credit guarantee scheme being up from 10 crores to 20 crores. A lot of MSMEs and a lot of startups are in the realm of MSMEs when they start up. They don't have the, sometimes the wherewithal or the state of business to acquire equity capital, and they need to raise debt. And this increase of limit will really help them to get the money they need to set up a manufacturing facility, buy the raw materials, or pay for the inventory that they need to create. So overall, this is a phenomenal budget for the startup ecosystem, and I think it should really push us forward in the right direction.
Comment as well on what the budget has said as far as gig workers are concerned, kind of moving that economy more towards formalization with the benefits that were announced. Kunal, what does that mean now for the gig economy?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I think it's an explicit appreciation of the fact that the new age service economy is such an integral part of Indian society and economy and the financial system, where now suddenly the finance minister has to acknowledge the fact that, look, there are millions of people being employed by the sector who need a social security net and identification for maybe security reasons or other reasons as well. I think it's testament to the impact that the startup ecosystem is having on our country. And I think it's a welcome move, because I'm sure the gig worker and the community of gig workers would really appreciate this movement.
Yes, they most certainly will. Sriram, a final word from you. The single biggest highlight as far as the budget is concerned.
I think the single biggest highlight in my view would be I would say the balance that the budget has. I think ensuring that macroeconomic fundamentals are not affected, but yet providing the impetus for entrepreneurs, like you mentioned, for the startup community, for consumers, and to have a consumer relief for people so that they invest back into the economy. I think the thrust has sort of moved and the needle has shifted for people to be motivated to spend more. So I think I would define it, as the budget with the right balance. And doing things the right way. I mean, there was in this, especially in the tax realm, I think they've really gone the full mile instead of not doing it halfway. And because if you really want a consumption boom, I think it has to be done in a targeted and in a much more, big bang way.
Right.
And I think that's how
Absolutely, and certainly much more than what was expected. That is what the finance minister has delivered there as far as the personal income tax cuts are concerned. Sriram and Kunal, many thanks for joining us on a big day here at the CNBC-TV18 Budget Headquarters. Appreciate your time. This is a startup budget. That's the word coming in from Kunal Behl. Sriram calling it a balanced budget that boosts consumption. But let's go across to the biggest banker in the country, SBI Chief Secy, speaking with Ritu on what the budget does for the banking sector, for credit offtake and perhaps for deposit mobilization.
You know, in terms of the budget and what it has done, how is your overall reading as to what it will do for economic growth and, more importantly, credit growth for banks?
Thanks, Ritu, for having me on your show. It's a very good budget. My simple assessment is I think it ticks a lot of boxes, both in terms of, as you mentioned, growth, economic growth as well as credit growth, which are both interlinked anyway, in terms of investment, in terms of MSMEs, agriculture. Yeah. I think most of these areas are well covered in the budget. But I have a few things I definitely would like to draw your attention. One is on the macros. The numbers seem to be conservative. If you see nominal GDP of 10.1, which they are estimating, which means that the real GDP is estimated at 6%. I'm sure it will be much more than that. Okay. And the tax buoyancy is at 1.1, which is in tune with what has been achieved. Yeah. So the macro numbers seem to be conservative. Okay. And as far as Capex is concerned, again, something what I've been hearing. A 10% increase. But if you really see, we were just looking at the budget numbers. It's not only about 11.2 lakh crores, which they mentioned. If you take the grants which are given to the states for capital purposes and the capital investment with the public sector, our estimate is the total Capex would amount to 19.8 lakh crores. What would something like 19.8 lakh crores in terms of Capex do for banks in terms of credit boost? No, it would. See, the usual credit growth is that if you're assuming, even on a conservative basis, 10% nominal GDP, you add 4 to 5% to that credit growth. So the credit growth is not only coming from the infra, it definitely would come from the KCC, for example, with the limit has been enhanced. To 5 lakh. 5 lakh with under the subvention scheme, which means that a lot of farmers who were eligible otherwise were not taking these loans because subvention was not available. Now the limit being increased would definitely be a positive. Sure. And the MSME also, while we witnessed a good credit growth in the last 2 years, is almost 14 to 15% across the banking system. A couple of things what we were witnessing is that while the limits, Capex, the plant and machinery limits were revised a few years ago, still people were thinking that to achieve certain growth rate, the limits had to be revised. In this budget, they have revised 2.5 times on the plant and machinery investment, and also on the revenue side also is 2 times. So in all, I think credit growth looks to be positive for the banking industry.
Lots of things that you mentioned, sir, but let me get to some of the specifics. You said credit growth will be assuming a nominal GDP growth rate of 10% plus 4% for the industry. So assuming this 10.14% for SBI, for FY26, what kind of credit growth do you anticipate, keeping everything in mind that you just talked about?
You have to wait for a week when we come with the results. But obviously, I can't give. If the nominal GDP is there at 10%, SBI consistently have been growing 4 to 5% over the GDP.
So we'll wait till next week for the number. But the big boost really has come in that for salary up to 12 lakh rupees, no income tax, net income tax payable. What will that do as far as retail credit growth is concerned? More money in the hands of people, does it necessarily mean they may be more open to borrowing?
Before we go to the credit growth, I think we should look at the deposits, which we have been talking, the banking system is struggling to get the deposits. Our estimate is this definitely will boost the savings because there's a, surplus in the hands of people. One is the direct benefit to the deposits. Part of that probably will go to the investments also. There's another element on the TDS for the senior citizen from 50,000
to 1 lakh.
The senior citizen deposit constitutes 20% of the banking system deposits. And, the TDS also is one of the reasons why some of the senior citizens don't want to keep in the bank. And that would add definitely to the banking deposit. So a combination of increased tax exemption as well as, in the TDS exemption limit increased add to the deposits. Then on the credit side, obviously, most of the personal credit is determined by the net monthly income to EMI to NMI. How much EMI
of your income you're paying as EMI.
So obviously, when the denominator increases, the scope for
higher EMI
is there, and that would definitely boost the consumption. In fact, the consumption, our economic research department tells that the consumption multiplier is 3 times. Which it is not about 12 lakhs contributing to equivalent amount or net savings or net surplus contributing to the consumption. The net surplus will have 3 times leading to the consumption. So this consumption multiplier is also very important to determine.
So could you put some numbers to what this will mean for SBI in terms of deposit boost and of course credit boost?
So we assume that the credit boost, as I said, I think is a combination of everything what is going to happen and which crystallizes into the GDP growth rate and adds to the credit growth rate. The deposits, I think broadly most of the banks will move to the double deposit growth rate. They're already there. I can't put a figure to that, but obviously it's a positive to the deposit mobilization.
The other big focus area of this budget has been MSMEs, whether that is the reclassification of MSMEs, so bringing more of them into the fold, and also enhancement of the guarantee cover, which has been doubled to 10 crore rupees.
Yes.
To put that together, how much additional credit do you think it would unlock? How many more customers will you now be able to serve?
So one is the credit guarantee definitely would help in terms of moving from a collateralized lending to a cash flow based lending backed by the guarantee. Today, I think most of the banks are moving towards, you have a lot of information on the MSME, you have GST data, you have income tax data, but still the focus on the collateral is there. Probably, this increased limit for the guarantee combined with the cash flow assessment which is available will increase the flow of credit to MSMEs. If we assume that the growth rate is 15%, we can definitely add 3 to 4 percentage points to this growth rate.
Okay, and the number of SMEs that will increasingly become eligible because of the reclassification?
So, in terms of the universe of MSMEs, when I look at our SBI portfolio, out of 1.6 million MSMEs whom we serve, 90% are micro enterprises. Correct. And some of the medium enterprises today are not classified as SME category. They are directly going to the corporate segment.
I see.
So some of them probably will join the medium, and some of the small will now become micro. Which means that the universe gets readjusted, and some of the large corporates, which we are classifying as mid and large corporate, will come into medium enterprises.
Okay, you mentioned the Kisan credit card enhanced limit, but what it also comes with is the credit card with a 5 lakh limit for micro enterprises. How significant is that move going to be for the segment?
It is important in the sense that most of the working capital limits given by the banks are required to be renewed every 12 months. So, but if you have a credit card with a longer eligibility or validity of the credit card, this problem of, operational problem of coming to the bank every year, or banks doing every year, I think this was a long time ago recommended, and I'm happy that this has become real.
All right, joining us right now is Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal to speak to us about Union Budget 2025, the big push supporting the middle class, startups and the manufacturing sector. Mr. Goyal, how do you think this budget fares in terms of giving more consumption power back to the middle class, because that had been a pain point over the last few quarters?
Well, it's a very transformational budget. It's balanced. Continuity is evident in the budget, but very strategic in its outlook. It has planned a vision very holistically. Now, the benefits given to the middle class. it straight away results in money in the pocket of the middle class. India has a very rapidly growing middle class with 25 crore poor having come out of multidimensional poverty. You are rapidly seeing more and more people with increasing incomes. Their disposable income becomes much bigger, savings of up to ₹1 lakh for all those who are earning up to 25 lakh rupees. And for those who are in a job at 12,75,000 rupees salary, you have zero income tax. I think it's a very, very big message that so far the government had focused on investment-led growth. Now we will have investment-led and consumption-led growth.
When it comes to duty, sir, we've got the new administration in the US and they have threatened tariffs. They've started with, of course, Canada and Mexico. They will go to China, and the feeling is they will impose tariffs on India as well. How are you gearing up, and how is that budget? How is this budget making India tariff ready?
Please don't go by feelings expressed by a few people. We have the courage of conviction that our friendship, our relationship with the United States is time-tested. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Trump share very deep bonds of friendship. He knows that India is a trusted partner of the United States of America. At the same time, we are wanting to work even closer with the United States of America to expand our relationship, whether it's on bringing back illegal immigrants, whether it's on making sure that American goods get a fair tariff regime in India which does not hurt their business interests, and simultaneously Indian exports to America also get equal opportunity. Whether it's our effort which we had started during the first Trump administration also to increase a lot of goods from America which we need. I mean, crude oil, gas, we require it. And I must say, Honorable President Trump is thinking in the right direction of bringing down energy costs, bringing down cost of crude oil, bringing down cost of gas. All of this will be great news for the Indian economy.
And there's an FTA on the table also, the trade deal?
Well, we will have discussions with our counterparts and with Honorable President Trump. And I'm very confident that we will strike a very balanced, very forward-looking partnership, which could include different types of trading arrangements. We are looking for a very robust and a very strong partnership with the United States.
A country is not just its soil, a country is its people. In line with this, for us, Viksit Bharat encompasses zero poverty, 100% quality good school education, access to high quality, affordable and comprehensive health care, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% women in economic activities, and farmers making our country the food basket of the world. In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, Youth, Annadata and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy and innovation, securing energy supplies, promoting exports and nurturing innovation. For this journey of development, our four powerful engines are agriculture, MSME, investments and exports. The fuel, our reforms, our guiding spirit, inclusivity, and the destination, Viksit Bharat. This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness. The domains are taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector and regulatory reforms. Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B. Secure inclusive development, C. Invigorate private sector investments, D. Uplift household sentiments, and E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As we complete the first quarter of the 21st century, continuing geopolitical headwinds suggest lower global I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. I propose to 1. Remove 7 tariff rates. This is over and above the 7 tariff rates removed in 23-24 budget. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 4.8% of the GDP.
ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है. ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा.
ये भारत सरकार का बजट है कि बिहार सरकार का बजट है? आपने बिहार के अलावा किसी और प्रदेश का नाम सुना वित्त मंत्री जी के पूरे बजट भाषण में?
The infrastructure is not going for the rest of the country. It's only going towards BR because we all know that this year is the BR election. So basically, for essence, and Maharashtra has been ignored, and Tamil Nadu, there's not a single word for Tamil Nadu or for any other southern states.
Tax sweeteners for the middle class, a firm hold on fiscal consolidation, and continuity on Capex. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget aims to give a fillip to consumption by putting money in the hands of the middle class. Also, as they say, no news is good news. For the markets, it is status quo as there is no change on capital gains. It wasn't expected. The big headline is the change in the income tax slabs. The government will forego 1 lakh crore rupees in direct tax revenues this year. That is the big story. That is the big headlines. As we've been pointing out, the 3 C's that the government intended to focus on, the prioritization has changed. It is consumption, Capex and consolidation that the government has taken forward. We're now joined by Ratin Roy, Distinguished Professor at the Kautilya School of Public Policy. Also with us, N.K. Singh, Chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, and Surjit Bhalla, former Executive Director for India at the IMF. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Mr. Singh, let me come to you first, sir. As I pointed out, it's the 3 C's: consumption, Capex and consolidation. The government clearly prioritizing consumption this time around.
So I think that, Shereen, that's not such a bad thing. If sharp changes in the income tax slab leaves higher disposable income in the hands of an average taxpayer, that has virtuous cycles in terms of what that higher disposable income is likely to do by boosting demand and consumption in the economy. But as you pointed out, this has been done alone, even though this really meant foregoing 1 lakh crores of revenue on taxes. This is not asymmetrical to the path of fiscal consolidation, which has been outlined rather clearly in the macroeconomic policy statement. I've heard many commentaries casting doubts on the government's commitment of fiscal consolidation and in terms of debt. But if one looks at page 12 of the macroeconomic policy statement, one finds that the fiscal deficit, having reached over 9% in 2021, is planning to come down to 4.4% in terms of the budget proposals, a fairly sharp contraction in the fiscal deficit. Equally, since we know that the investor community, particularly rating agencies, are very interested in the path of the debt and debt to GDP, the debt trajectory, which is also outlined there, really projects that debt to GDP of the central government will come down to just over 50% by 2031, of course, if there are no disruptions of an unusual kind which take place. Now, therefore, both in terms of the fiscal record and the fiscal consolidation, and in terms of the debt coming down in a significant southward direction, is a very strong signal to rating agencies, to the investor community, that macroeconomic stability has not been compromised, notwithstanding the far-reaching changes which have been taken place in the direct taxes, coupled with the fact that next week we are likely to see the new tax laws, which are going to be simpler, cleaner, more easily understood by an average assessee. And it will therefore give meaning and content to faceless assessment. She has also outlined proposals of how to bring down the multiple assessments which are pending in appeals of various kinds. So if one takes a holistic view of that, one finds that there are very significant changes which have been outlined in the budget.
Significant changes outlined in the budget, and particularly as far as the fiscal consolidation roadmap is concerned, a credible roadmap being presented. That's the view coming in from NK Singh. But let me bring Surjit Bhalla into the conversation. Surjit Bhalla, many thanks. You were on the program yesterday when we were discussing the economic survey, and you were an advocate for the government to move on consumption and provide tax relief, and that's exactly what they've done. Surjit Bhalla, your headline for Budget 2025.
Look, I will break my headlines into two components. The non-tax component, which is the calling card of this budget, and the tax component. On the non-tax component, I think every sound, every bite, every policy was very, very welcome and in the right direction. So not a single discordant note. I had thought the same thing about the tax, because it was something that I've been arguing, many others have been arguing, and finally there was delivery. Until one looks at the fine print, and maybe NK can clarify this, I don't know how much will be clarified and perhaps made right in the tax bill, which will be introduced next week. The problem is as follows. That I see as follows. Until 12 lakhs, there's no, forget the 75,000, until 12 lakhs, there is no tax. But if you earn 12 lakhs and 1 rupee, you will pay 60,000 rupees of tax, because the initial slab, which in all countries of the world is where the tax schedule starts, but the initial slab in India is 0 to 4 lakhs. So 0 to 4 lakhs, you don't pay anything. 4 to 8 lakhs, you pay 5%, and 8 to 12 lakhs, you pay 10%. So NK, is this correct? That there is no marginal whatever, as every other country does, and as India has done until the new tax law was brought in. So maybe this is what the tax bill will clarify. Assume the tax bill makes this right. This is the most superb budget I could have imagined. Absolutely. And, I have compared it, will this be a 1991 moment? But, 1991 was a huge crisis. So if this is as reform-oriented and given that our growth rate, bad enough as it is, it's 6.4%, it's not It's not possible to have a 1991 moment. Again, thank you very much, because you don't want a 1991, pre-1991 situation. But if it is not if it is as it is stated to be, then I think it's very disturbing, and I hope that the government will reconsider. So, NK, is the new tax bill going to make this right? Or am my understanding, I hope my understanding of the whole situation is wrong.
Well, Surjit, yes. Well, Surjit, I would urge you, notwithstanding your domain understanding, that why not wait and see the fine print, since next week is not too far away, and see the fine print in the new tax proposals. But I think that you have complimented not only the government, but the finance minister as a very far-reaching sort of changes. I myself, although I have been part of the Ministry of Finance for very long and had done the last big simplification of the income tax in a very significant way, when I really am applauding the fact that really this is taking a hit of 1 lakh crore is not small. Because by taking a hit of 1 lakh crore, one would have expected, Surjit, that the FIS would have gone through the roof and that the debt would have gone further northwards. But if you look at the two as symmetrically, both the hit on the revenue side, along with the consistency and the symmetry on the overall macroeconomic framework, I think that you are right that in some ways this is a very far-reaching budget, even though India is not undergoing the kind of balance of payments crisis which we all know in 1991. And this is one of the first time, therefore, that this kind of a far-reaching reform has taken place without a crisis. And that is something which we need to certainly applaud.
I'll come back to come back to you, Surjit, in just a second. Yes, Mr. Singh, go ahead.
Yeah. One other, which is not part of the budget, but is part of the announcement, which is also going to be far-reaching, and which is on FDI and BITS, that there is a new wording of the BITS law, and that is something that will also be far-reaching in terms of investment, in terms of growth, in terms of technology. We have to await that, but I think it'll come soon. So the sound bites as well as the direction is all in the right direction. I just hope, so I agree with NK. I'm going to wait just a few more days. But if it is as we expect, it's a fantastic occasion for India. And this will propel the growth rate also upwards. And NK, you're very right. You know, what's this problem with more consumption? BIT,
I did ask the Economic Affairs Secretary, and he said that it is work in progress, but they are certainly addressing some of the issues that you spoke of, but he didn't want to be drawn into the specifics just yet. Rathin Roy also here with me, waiting by. Rathin, you've heard both Mr. N.K. Singh as well as Surjit Bhalla, and we've been having this conversation. You do believe that the numbers are credible. Finally, on going over the fine print and the details, the assessment.
Well, as they say in French, plus ça change, même chose, which is that, look, since 2016, apart from the COVID years, expenditure of the government of India has been shrinking. And for the last 3 years, tax GDP ratios are stagnant. Therefore, the entire fiscal discipline that the central government has it's got through expenditure cuts. Broadly speaking, they cut the fiscal deficit by 0.5% of GDP every year, and then they cut expenditure by 0.5% of GDP every year. That's what's happened this year. 1 lakh crores in terms of the income tax cut is not a very large number. And I think Mr. Singh is absolutely right. It is consistent with maintaining fiscal prudence, except for one worry I have. Finance Ministry has a tendency to underestimate revenue foregone. I looked up what happened with the corporate tax cuts in 2019. They said 1 lakh crores then. Ultimately, according to experts, the tax cut was about 3 lakh crores.
Okay.
So if that happens, then all this hard-won fiscal responsibility, which I commend and encourage, will be jeopardized. And therefore, I really do hope that a ministry that is not very good at predicting tax numbers, at least this time gets it right. I think the big reform that I like, and really, I mean, giving reforms to the top 10% of the population in the hope of increasing expenditure, look at it another way. Are we saying that people who earn less than 6 times the per capita income are not prosperous enough to pay income tax? It's something worth thinking about for viewers. I mean, what kind of society do we live in, where people earning 6 times the per capita income, it's only then that you start paying income tax. So there is a prosperity problem in India, and what the budget has done is acknowledged it, by no means resolved it. The good thing the budget has done, I think the best thing it's done for doing business in India, is announced that next week, and I was very pleased the finance minister said this, there will be a tax bill that will harmonize and improve on our legislation, and she's promised that that bill will cut the clutter by half. My God. Yeah. If that doesn't do something for lifting confidence in India and in the business community, I don't know what will. That's much better than all this bakhana business and all that. And by the way, I do hope Dr. Singh is happy that there was so much Bihar in this budget. I've never seen so much Bihar in this budget.
No, so that point is well taken. As far as the tax code is concerned, the finance minister has promised that it will be half the size of the existing tax code. And, many tax experts here on the program were joking with me, saying that we might be out of a job. We might be out of a job at the end of it. But Mr. Singh, coming back to reforms as well as the center-state compact, if I may articulate it in that fashion, whether we talk about Capex, we talk about the national manufacturing policy, we talk about the index that they intend to put out as far as competitiveness is concerned, the additional grants to states, of course, linked to caveats. How do you see this new center-state compact as well as the revival of PPP, bringing back public-private partnership, which is the stated objective in this budget?
So I think that, Shereen, allow me to make just first 2 or 3 very quick comments on what Sujit said and what Ratin also said. Well, Sujit, I think that one additional factor of reform, which I'm sure you would like to consider, is that, all of us have applauded for very good reasons the most important contribution of late Dr. Manmohan Singh in the Indo-US nuclear pact which he was able to arrive at. And that, I think, was, given the difficulties, was a very, very important contribution. But the fact remains that because of the impediments of various laws relating to insurance, we were not able to harness any private sector investment in the entire area of the civil use of nuclear energy. This bill, this budget, clears that great cobweb away, and that I regard as an important reform, because that as we go forward, as we adopt more and more of artificial intelligence, we must recognize that this is very energy intensive activity. We need to find clean sources of renewable energy, and the direction given in the budget on the reform of the use of atomic energy, modular atomic plants, and the changes which will enable private sector investment to come in this is a very, very important reform. Sujit, I totally agree with you that since you were part of the FRBM Act, which we both did together, that we must recognize the fact that with no fiscal crisis looming around, with no issues of serious macroeconomic stability, voluntarily a fairly credible path of fiscal consolidation has been outlined, as also the fact on the debt. Because, you and I, if you recall, had done a lot in making the changes in the new FRBM Act, where we wanted debt to become the principal macroeconomic anchor, and that the government accepted. In that pursuance of that, the downward south trajectory on the debt is very, very important, which has been outlined in some detail in the macroeconomic policy statement. To your point, Shereen, yes, I totally agree with you. In no other recent budget do I recall the mention not only a public-private partnership, as you said, but in so many ways the mention of a partnership with the states. In partnership with the states has repeatedly figured in several of the announcements made by the finance minister. I think this augurs well, because we all believe that not only in regard to debt and in regard to fiscal deficits, but in the multiple areas, the partnership with the states and meaningful partnership with the states will be a very important fulcrum of change as we go forward.
Surjit, Ratan, you wanted to come in on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that while on the partnerships with the states points, in the afternoon I was talking to some of the governments in South India, and they're not very happy. They view this attempt to impose policy conditionalities on them as being unnecessary if you're South Indian. I told them this is probably for the Bibaru states.
Yeah.
But they, for example, one chief minister, I live in Hyderabad, you can guess who said this, one of two, one finance minister said to me, who are they to tell us about global capability centers? We get them here. They don't come to us because the government, what he's actually said, Delhi Sultanate, tells us how to do these things. So I think this budget did come across to the more prosperous states, the economically more dynamic states, as slightly patronizing.
Okay, Surjit Bhala, back to you on some of the reform measures that were articulated by both Ratan as well as Mr. Singh, but on Capex, I had Vinay Chatterjee in a short while ago, and his point is that are we moving away from the stated objective of pump priming the economy by way of infrastructure investment, and has there now been a shift towards consumption, and what that augurs as far as the long-term economic policy making is concerned? Would you agree that this signals a shift perhaps?
Look, I've maintained, and every economist has maintained, that one of the best policies to get growth going in the initial stages of development is infrastructure. There's also something called diminishing returns. This government has a fantastic record on infrastructure and public investment in infrastructure over the last decade. And I think the time has come for a shift in gears. It doesn't mean that this is any loss. Even now, there's a fair amount of infrastructure investment. So that's point number one. I fully welcome this thrust towards more consumption, if you will, and more middle-class relief. I want to get to what Ratan has been saying, and perhaps you may have to have another session on this, but I haven't seen too many people argue that, listen, I have to look at the per capita income for my first slab and has to be a certain proportion to it. It's a bit technical, but we already are at one of the highest tax to GDP ratios in India. What would you like us to do? To increase the tax to GDP ratio even higher? Unless you're saying we should income tax and cut all other taxes. But I think the central point of any policymaker in any government, and we have an example of 190 countries, over the last 75 years, we have data for that, is to contain taxation and provide, which is why we are one of the highest in the world. Our aggregate tax to GDP ratio is 19%, the same as in Korea, as in US. US is maybe at 20%. So what? And why is it that we have to look at the per capita income of Western countries in order to find out whether we are taxing too little, which is the implication of Ratan's statement? So I think this is recognizing, to answer now, Shereen, this is recognizing that our growth story is investment and now consumption. You can't just keep on investing because unless your incomes are growing at a much rapid pace. The last point I want to make on this is our potential, before somebody says, listen, we are growing at 6% and that's good. No, we have to grow at our potential, not what somebody else's growth rate is. And our potential is very easily somewhere close to 8%. And we've done that, and we will do that. It is completely on the cards and in the forecast, if you will. But we need a couple of corrections, as every society, as every country does. And I think they are very much in that direction, but I'll wait till next week. But I think, a minor point that I disagree with, and we've had this discussion with NK, I think debt is very important. And I don't think the fiscal deficit, I can see the linkage, NK, between fiscal deficits and debt. But, there comes a tide in the affairs of men when you start looking at things beyond the fiscal deficit. So therefore, on the affairs of countries, I'm not saying go to 10, 9%, 8%, 7%, but I think, give more tax relief and go to 4.8%, just fine.
Just fine. And I know you're not the only one who's been suggesting that, Surjit Bhalla, but the government deciding to stick with 4.4%. And of course, moving to debt to GDP provides them with fiscal flexibility, is what the Economic Affairs Secretary explained to me while he was here earlier on. But, yes, Ratin,
very quick point. I just want to actually, for a change, defend the government. I think Finance Secretary Somnathan very clearly said last year that this was the last year when you could expect the government to do heavy lifting on investment. This information has been conveyed very clearly to the private sector last year, very explicitly, and the year before that, slightly more implicitly. So I think it's very unfair to expect a government to do heavy lifting on investment when the private sector just sits there and, rakes in sort of supernormal profits and doesn't do investing. Now the private sector has to step up to the plate. As far as what Surjit said, well, he has implicit growth rates and the deep state. So I must learn some economics from him on exactly why he thinks that activity is so high.
Well,
why fiscal consolidation is a bad idea.
We'll have to bring you back again on a longer show for a longer conversation, gentlemen. But Mr. Singh, I'm going to give you the final say, sir. As far as growth is concerned, and to the point that Surjit was making, and the point that the budget makers who were here with me in the studio a short while were making, they believe that they're now likely to be within grasp, in the words of the chief economic advisor, of the upper end of the estimate of 6.8%. But, that's good. Is it good enough? What should we aspire to from here on?
I lost her. I can't hear her.
Mr. Singh, can you hear me?
No, he can't.
Oh, we seem to have lost that line with him. We'll try and reconnect. But on growth, Surjit, very quickly, as we try and reconnect with Mr. Singh.
The employment story is very, very good. The growth story, India's growth story this decade has been, what has not been remembered or given enough credit for is that since 2010, our GDP growth rate has been higher than China on an average basis now for 14 years. We're doing good. I have no question that we are doing good. We can do superbly. It is in our hands. It is in our destiny. And it is in the likelihood that it will happen.
In our hands, in our destiny. Mr. Singh, the final comment from you on growth, sir, where this budget leaves us as far as growth aspirations are concerned. As I pointed out, budget makers now suggesting they feel confident of being able to get closer to the 6.8% estimate that the economic survey had held out. Within grasp is what the Economic Affairs Secretary said. But, where does that leave us from here on?
So, three very quick comments. First, on a lighter note, Surjit, I'm somewhat amused that given your domain expertise, as the former executive director of the International Monetary Fund, which you served with great aplomb, you seem to really not really attach so much importance on adherence to the path of fiscal consolidation, on fiscal deficit and debt. Be that as it may, I do believe that the rest of the world, the investor community, particularly the rating agencies, and I urge you to really find out what happens in Basel every 2 months when all the governors of the central bank gather there to be informed about the progress of each country on the adherence to the fiscal consolidation and on the debt target. But I will leave that. Where I agree with you, Surjit, fully, is that there is no getting away that our real growth potential is closer to 8%, which is also necessary by the power of compounding. And considering that inflation is likely to be in the range of around 4 to 4.5%, giving you a nominal growth, therefore, of over 11.5, 12%, will bring us much closer to the realization of the kind of multipliers which will enable the dominant quest of every Indian to become a developed economy, somewhat closer on that trajectory. And therefore, sticking merely to this current nominal growth trajectory is really underestimating our potential. And on that note, Sujit, I fully agree and endorse that that must be our unrealized quest, the quest to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
Well, gentlemen, I have to say it has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with the three of you. I cannot remember the last time that we've had such a conversation that's so rich on information, so rich on data, and so rich in terms of just being able to engage with one another in a civilized manner on television. You don't see this very often on Indian television anymore, but it's absolutely wonderful to see you, the three of you, engage in a fabulous debate and discussion on what the budget can and should do for the economy. N.K. Singh, Surjit Bhalla and Ratin Roy, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18 on Budget 2025 at the CNBC-TV18 Budget Headquarters. We're going to take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with more.
Medium term. However, our aspiration for a Viksit Bharat inspires us, and the transformative work